Hey everyone, and welcome back to another E55 video. Today, we're going to compare the W211 E55 AMG and the older W210 E55 AMG to see what exactly are the differences and whether or not the W211 is worth the extra cost over the older W210. So, let's begin. Now, I had the opportunity of reviewing a W210 E55 wagon earlier this year, and after that, I often reflect on whether or not it's worth it to get the more expensive W211. But after owning the W211 E55 AMG for a few months, it's quite clear the W211 is the faster car. But does that make it the better car to own? So in this video, we're going to compare performance, the powertrains, the exterior and interior, and how they compare in terms of driving dynamics. I'll also go over the ownership experience of both, and which car might be worth more in the future. So let's start off with performance. The W211 E55 AMG is obviously the faster car in a straight line. It has a recorded 0 to 60 time of 4.1 seconds, and most sources say it can do 0 to 60 in the mid to low 4s. The older W210 E55 on the other hand does 0 to 60 in a very respectable 5.4 seconds, and the wagon we tested it does it in around 5.7 seconds. While both are electronically limited to 155 miles per hour, the W211 accelerates to its top speed much faster, as you can see in these times. And this pretty much is because the W211 has substantially more power, being rated at 516 foot-pounds of torque and 469 horsepower versus the 391 horsepower and 349 foot-pounds of torque in the older W210. However, while the W211 offers more power, both have relatively similar power-to-weight ratios. The W210 sedan weighs in at roughly 3,600 pounds, and the wagon being about 200 or so pounds more. The W211, on the other hand, is a lot heavier, weighing roughly 4,000 pounds, and if you have options like the panoramic sunroof, it can easily weigh north of 4,300 pounds. In fact, because of this weight difference, there's not a huge difference when it comes to taking these two sedans on the track. For instance, the W210 did the Hockenheim short circuit 0.2 seconds slower than the W211, according to some random website I found. Also, braking is much better in the older W210. While the W211 offers huge 8-piston calipers up front and 4 in the rear, the W210 comes to a stop from 60 to 0 in a shorter distance by 15 or so feet, even though the W210 has only 2 pistons up front and 1 in the rear. And the better braking distance is mostly due to the W210 weighing a lot less. Now, let's take a look at their powertrains. So the main difference between these two cars in terms of their powertrains is their engines up front. The W210 features the naturally aspirated M113 5.4 liter V8 engine. The W211, on the other hand, features the M113K engine, which is a 5.4 liter V8 with a supercharger mounted on top, hence the K for compressor. Now, you might think that they both share the same engine because it's M113 and that you can mount a supercharger on the W210 and receive the same power as the W211, but that's not entirely the case. The M113K engine has a lower compression ratio, stronger pistons, and different heads to account for the extra 13.1 psi of boost the supercharger adds. However, there's a few people that say they've added superchargers to stock M113 engines, and they've handled the extra power without a problem. So all in all, both engines are stout and overbuilt, and quite simple. They don't have variable valve timing, and are single overhead cam with 3 valves per cylinder. And that means that they don't have good gas mileage, especially in the W211. Regarding the supercharger in the W211, it's a 2.1 liter twin screw Lysholm supercharger with an air-to-water intercooler and is engaged through an electromagnetic clutch, and only engages when it senses that it needs the extra boost, and it does this to save some fuel. Moving on to the transmissions, both have the same hardware as they share the Mercedes-built 5G Tronic transmission. However, shifts are claimed to be 35% faster in the W211. But honestly, after driving both cars, it pretty much feels the same, and you can tell the transmission isn't made to shift fast. It's more about being smooth and handling power with ease. In fact, the 5G is rated at handling over 700 foot-pounds of torque with no problem. Now in the W211, you have comfort, sport, and manual mode, whereas in the W210, You have a winter mode and a sport mode, and later iterations offering a manual mode. Comfort and winter are pretty much the same, they just start the car in second gear. The final drive ratios are different, as the W210 offers a 282 diff ratio, while the W211 offers a 265 diff ratio. Moving on to suspension, the W211 offers air suspension that's tuned by AMG, and it gives you 3 modes of stiffness along with 2 modes of height adjustment, while also lowering the car when it goes at faster speeds. The W210, on the other hand, offers fixed conventional suspension, with later models featuring Bilstein springs and shock absorbers. After driving the W210 wagon, I felt AMG did an amazing job in tuning it to handle well, while also being comfortable and fit for everyday use. The W211, on the other hand, rides like a cloud in the lowest stiffness setting. If you choose to put it in the highest stiffness setting, you really feel every modulation and imperfection on the road, and quite honestly, I never leave it in that setting, it just doesn't suit the nature of the car. As for the exterior, this is probably the biggest difference between the two. The cars do share some similarities up front with the quad eyes and the grille, but everything else is drastically different after that. The W211 still looks like a modern car despite it being 16 years old, and Mercedes did a good job of this with its curved lines and its overall subtle but elegant design. On the other hand, the same cannot be said for the older W210. It's much more boxy and classic, and you can definitely tell it's a car from the 90s. But make no mistake though, the W210 has a more iconic and recognizable look to it, whereas the W211 tends to just blend in with today's cars. One aspect that you just have to respect with the W210 is those AMG monoblock wheels. They're so distinct and carry a much bigger presence compared to the normal 18-inch wheels on the W211. Overall, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and if you like classic cars, you'll definitely appreciate the W210 more. The interiors are also drastically different, with the W211 being much more modern, but one thing that they both share is impeccable interior build quality. Both cabins are put together very well, but the W211 definitely offers more features, which makes it feel like a modern interior, especially when you look at its overall design. The W211 seats are also more supportive and have a nicer texture to the leather, but both are equally as comfortable, with the W210 feeling softer and more like a cushion. Interestingly enough though, one thing both cars share is massage seats. So finally, how do these cars drive? Well, both offer really good low-end torque, and you never feel like you're pressed to rev out the engines. However, you'll find that both cars will pull all the way, and they never feel like they're gassed out, unlike smaller modern turbocharged engines. The W211 definitely feels more powerful, and you can really sense the difference when you mash the throttle and the supercharger kicks in. In terms of steering, both cars feel pretty much the same. The W210 might feel a little more direct and analog, but I feel like the W211 steering is a little more quicker. In terms of handling, it's really tough to say which is the better and more confidence-inspiring sedan. The W210 has fixed suspension and is lighter, but at the same time, AMG has done a good job in tuning the air suspension of the W211 to not let the extra weight hold it back. If you're looking at these two performance sedans, keep in mind that if you expect them to be amazing track cars, you're going to be a bit disappointed. They're both pretty heavy and big, and they're more about cruising really fast on the highway with ease and ultimate comfort. The W210 is probably the way to go if you want something a bit more tossable, but otherwise, I'd recommend looking at a newer W204 C63 AMG if you still want a refined AMG that's powerful and handles well. So finally, what is ownership like? Well, both cars are built quite well, but the W211 will definitely cost more to maintain in the long run. It's got the added complexity of the supercharger, plus the air suspension, which is by far the car's weak point. It's also got way more electronics. The W210 on the other hand is much more simpler, with fixed suspension and no forced induction. Many say the M113 engine and the 5G Tronic automatic transmission are bulletproof if regularly maintained. There are a few things to watch out for on the W210, and its biggest weak point is rust, especially around the wheel wells. If you were to ask me which one will be worth more in the future, I'd put my money on the older W210. Enthusiasts are the one that will pay big money for cars, and they tend to value vehicles which are simpler, and the W210 definitely holds to that. It's got a powerful yet simple powertrain, and way less electronics compared to the W211. Its look is also way more iconic and classic, whereas the W211 definitely blends in with modern cars. If Mercedes had offered these W210s in a manual, I could only imagine how much people would be paying for low mileage clean ones right now. Anyways everyone, there you have it. That's a quick little summary of how these E55s compare. Now, the W211 is more expensive, but after driving both, I'd say it's worth the difference. Things like the day-to-day comfort, the modern amenities, and the power delivery are definitely worth it. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and comment, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more AMG content. Thanks again.